Hello and welcome to Dr. VGP Talk Show. Hello and welcome to Dr. VGP Talk Show that reaches 42 million households, including 2 million across Chicagoland. Today, our guest is a phenomenal leader whose deep family roots has propelled him to become the next mayor of Naperville. Naperville City is the third largest city in the state of Illinois with a population of over 150,000, including 28% Asian Americans. Our guest, the newly elected mayor of Naperville, has secured the highest number of votes for a mayoral election ever in the history of Naperville. The choice before us is not what kind of Naperville will we have in the next 4 years, but what kind of Naperville will we have in the next 40 years? Yes, next 40 years. Imagine, if you will, for a moment, a debt-free economic strong enough for every Napervillian to share in the American dream. Imagine, if you will, for a moment, a debt-free economic strong enough that every Napervillian can share in the American dream. Imagine a healthcare system where every Napervillian receives the medicine he or she needs, and no senior ever has to stay up all night deciding whether to buy food or fill a prescription. Imagine a society where every senior is treated with dignity and respect. Imagine a Naperville where the sustainable development goals are met with clean and safe drinking water and comprehensive sanitation systems. Imagine a Naperville where we give all children a first-class education and, of course, the best education in the country. Well, Naperville, it's time to stop imagining. Today, here, Scott WEHRLI, the newly elected mayor of Naperville, and here is crusade on making this bold imagination of new Naperville a reality.
Naperville has always been my home. Growing up, my parents believed in giving back to their community, and for my entire life, that's what I've done too. Served our great city and offered solutions. As mayor, I use my decades of experience to continue that mission. I have more than 32 years of local law enforcement experience. As mayor, the safety of Naperville for all of our residents will be my #1 priority. I'm also a local businessman who employs over 200 hardworking people. I know what it takes to make a payroll, balance the books, negotiate contracts, and as mayor, I'll always respect your tax dollars, the people's money. What I heard from fellow business owners is that getting loans from big banks was getting too hard. I helped co-found a group of community banks that specialized in small business. In these uncertain times, we need a mayor who will look out for our businesses and cut the red tape so they can create good jobs and keep fueling a thriving local economy that helps our schools and our residents. Naperville isn't just my home, it's our home. We didn't become great by choosing sides. We became great by doing what's right for our community, our neighbors, and our neighbors' kids. I'm Scott WEHRLI, and I'm running for mayor.
Welcome to Dr. VGP's talk show that reaches 42 million households, including 2 million across Chicagoland. We're delighted to have you, Sir Scott WEHRLI, at our Globalized studio in Naperville.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're very delighted to have you and excited. Today, we are going to learn more about Scott WEHRLI, the person. He was recently elected as the next mayor of Naperville City, the third largest city in the state of Illinois, for the next 4 years. Scott, emerging from your recent jubilant victory, I should say, as the next mayor of Naperville, the third largest city in the state of Illinois, tell us what made you run for the mayor's race.
Wow, I've been a lifelong resident of Naperville, so this community has always been very, very special to me. I was an adopted kid from Chicago, and I could have ended up anywhere in the world. And my parents brought me to this place. It changed the trajectory of my life. And I've always had this sense of giving back to the community, whether through volunteerism from the time I was 12 years old on to now being 53. I've been very active in this place. In this particular moment in time, we had a unique situation happening with our city council. We had half of our city council seats up for grabs. People were either terming out or not going to run again. And we also had a mayor who had chosen not to run for another term. And as I started looking at the roles that those positions play in our community, how important those things are, I then got into my background and unique historical perspective of living in Naperville all my life, and I realized that I have a lot of different unique skill sets that I think could really contribute to what we're trying to do here. And never been a politician before, but I've always been a doer in the community, and I think it's going to be a good fit.
Incredible, from a successful business tycoon with your philanthropic outlook to civic engagement.
Yes.
Tell us, Scott, about your growing up and childhood years.
Well, I grew up in a little area of Naperville called Maplebrook 2, a very normal house with two working parents. And they were at a point where they were trying to grow their business. And my mom did hair out of the house. My dad was going in the work into the construction business. They were long days where he wouldn't come home until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And when you're growing up in that type of environment, you find yourself thrust into different things, everything from the scouts to sports and everything else, because your parents are either taking you to work with them or they kind of put you over in these places. And for me, it was a combination of some days I would go to work with them, but I really enjoyed those opportunities to spend time with these other neighbors and folks in the community who gave their time to be community leaders and run those Boy Scout programs, coach those T-ball and Little League sports, so I could have those opportunities. And that's what's been so special about this community. I mean, everybody has always done something for their neighbor and their neighbor's kid. And I really think that's one of the special things that put Naperville on the map.
It's incredible. Your college days, how were your college days? You had 62 cousins and I'm sure a whole bunch of friends in Naperville. What were your favorite hangouts and what did you do apart from college in your spare time?
So the WEHRLI family goes back to the 1840s, and they when I was adopted into the family, I had 12 aunts and uncles, 62 first cousins.
Wow.
And I chose to go to school at North Central College, which is right here in downtown Naperville. I was able to work full-time for my dad's construction business and also attend school and have that type of experience. It was interesting to me because you go to college and a lot of those students are full-time students, and that's the only thing they do. So I had to adapt my schedule around those group process meetings and these different activities as a college student with my work schedule. And a lot of those classmates I had, some of them got it, some of them didn't. Some of them were also working full-time. So we kind of had our own unique friend group because they were working in the restaurant business for their family businesses or whatever. But we tried to make the best of it and truly have a college experience and enjoy all the things that came with Naperville. What's amazing about North Central College is its proximity to Chicago. So we were able to jump on the train, go into the city, and it's just a different transformative experience when you're able to go down and see something totally different, totally unlike Naperville, and hang out in a different place.
It's good to know that you're a work-study student growing up in college. I think that must have prepared you. At 24 years, you were the youngest liquor commissioner ever to be appointed by a mayor, and you've been that for the last 29 continuous years. It's a no mean feat, an incredible, I would say, an achievement. And what is your biggest takeaway being in the Liquor Commission all these years?
I was the news director at WONC, which is at North Central College, my senior year. And there was an election going on, and the person who was not supposed to win the election was a guy named Sam McCrane. And I ended up at his house as the news director while some of the other reporters got to go to the big parties. Well, I ended up at Sam's house, and he ultimately got elected. And I'm the only person from the media there, and I'm interviewing him, and suddenly all the Chicago press shows up, and they're trying to figure out who this guy is. A couple of years later, he called me and he said, "Hey, I think I would like to have you on the Liquor Commission to give a young person's perspective on what's going on in our liquor license establishments, but more so give you the long-term vision for what we would like to see here in this community." And I didn't realize what that meant until I got into it and got onto the job. And I heard from them their long-term vision involved the elimination of the traditional tavern, where you would just be selling beer and wine and hard alcohol. And they wanted to see Naperville full of restaurants that would have a full kitchen, and that would be the barrier to entry in order to have that additional bar license. So as they shrunk those tavern licenses and let them go away on their own, or just stopped renewing them as there were management changes, etc., we suddenly started seeing the good restaurants come into our community, and we developed this thriving nightlife and hospitality industry, which is one of the best in the suburbs. I mean, we literally have those Chicago restaurateurs out here, and now world-renowned chefs opening up restaurants in Naperville. So that was a real eye-opener for me as a 24-year-old, seeing how the long-term effects of good planning and sticking to your ideas can really have an impact on your community.
It's an excellent concept, and how that growth has become. Naperville is now a buzzing nightlife with fantastic restaurants, like you rightly said. Scott, you have served 18 years on the North Central College Board of Trustees, 20 years on the Naperville Partnership Board, which develops economic development for the city. And you're also the chairman of the Board of Trustees of Marymount Academy in Aurora. You are truly a multifaceted personality with a missionary zeal, as you can see. You come across as an accessible leader with head on your shoulders and both your feet firmly on the ground. Who is your mentor? Where did you get this inspiration to become this phenomenal leader that you are today?
Boy, my mentors are countless, but I've had so many in our community that have meant so much to me. One of my first mentors was a high school dean named Bill Young. He ultimately went on to be my Park District Police Chief, and I worked with him for decades while he was in that capacity. But he always gave me very solid advice, let me make my mistakes and learn from them. And that was very important to me. I was mentored by my friend, and he actually was a coworker as well, George Pradle. He worked with me as a police officer. He worked alongside with me when I worked with him as a liquor commissioner for 20 years. And I got to see how George did it. And it was so inspirational to me, because I saw how George could find those people in the room who he felt were not at the table. They didn't have a voice. And he would reach out to them and introduce himself, and he would extend his hand and he says, "Hello, I'm George." He would never talk about being the mayor or anything else. He just wanted them to have a friend. And I thought that really was such an important part of how you can bring a community together. There's a lot of people that they look at these titles and being elected to office as being a power position, and I don't look at it that way. George never did, and for me, this isn't about Scott having this title of mayor. This is about me doing everything I can to make Naperville continue to be one of the most amazing places in the world. You add to that my friend, President WEHRLI Emeritus at North Central College. He was the president of the college when I started there. He was a new president at the time. I served with him for a couple decades while he was the president, and I was a trustee. His sage advice along that way, and the things we learned from each other about behavior of people and getting people to work together from all different types of education and background, those are things I continue to use every day. But the folks here in town are countless as far as those influences, and you pick and choose those different things that you take along with you.
Yes, Mayor Pradle is an iconic legend of Naperville City.
Yes,
we all
indeed.
know the longest serving mayor in the city of Naperville.
Yeah, they broke the mold after him.
Yes. Now, you have inherited the WEHRLI family construction business, and it's grown with over 200 employees today. And I think you being so successful, you wanted to share your success with those not so fortunate. So in 2006, you co-founded a community bank, a much needed initiative of that time. Could you briefly tell us about that initiative and where it is today?
So my dad's construction business, he created it on his own back in 1959 and grew it over the years with different partners. I got involved in the business as a college student, more so full time. Prior to that, I was working part time in that business. But one of the things I learned around all those years was banking relationships were very important. And as I was having conversations with different community leaders and friends of mine who were local business owners, small business owners, some medium-sized business owners, back in around 2006, we determined that there were a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on in the banking space, and those local decisions with regard to lending for small business, they were not being made locally anymore. And we thought there would be a great opportunity and model for us to start our own community bank. So we got together with some friends from Joliet and started having more and more conversations about it. And in 2006, 2007, we started creating these community banks down in Will County first, Plainfield, Joliet. We did one in Naperville, Burr Ridge, Homer, Lockport, Morris, Shanahan, Manuka. So we had all these different banks created. We raised over $100 million in private capital, and then navigated those banks through the recession, because that was a tough time for being a new bank, obviously. Took the company public in 2013 on NASDAQ. We were about $1.5 billion, a little shy of $2 billion in size then. And then in 2017, we merged with Busey Bank, which is where I continue to serve on the board. And that bank is now the #1 Forbes rated bank in the state of Illinois, number 26 overall in the country, and is around
Such an impressive
$12.5 billion in assets. So
Wow.
I've been blessed to work with amazing people who are community bankers who really get it. And we continue to lend into the community today. And it's just it's a lot of fun learning about other people's businesses.
Yeah, I think City of Naperville is in the safe hands of a proven leader for the next 4 years, which are critical, especially trying to restore the city after the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
The choice before us is not what the kind of Naperville will we have in the next 4 years, but what kind of Naperville will we have in the next 40 years.
Right.
And yes, your next 4 years will lay the foundation and roadmap for Naperville for the next 40 years. What will be your priorities in this direction?
Well, number one, we have to continue to stay on the fiscally conservative road that we have for the last several years. You know, Mayor Cherico and the City Council had done a very good job of making sure we got our reserves back to where they were supposed to be, that we reduced our debt, that we were making our pension payments, and it's extremely important that we continue on that path. That said, there were a lot of capital improvement projects and other things that kind of got kicked down the road, which are upon us, and we have to get these repairs done. We have to get these replacements done. There's $150 million in capital improvement projects in the next couple of years that we're going to have to navigate through and prepare for, and it's a lot of money. It's the biggest projects in the city's history. Additionally, my campaign has been focused on public safety and economic development and what I call the people's money. Public safety has been the #1 identified thing of all the conversations I've had throughout this community. That's what people talk about. They don't have this perception of feeling as safe as they once did. Maybe that's because we had that riot a couple of years ago, or we went through a pandemic, or they just don't feel like Naperville is the same place that they once knew. With those things in mind, my conversations and my background in law enforcement with our police chief and me working as a part-time police officer here for 33 years, I have a unique perspective on attacking that issue. And I've had some great conversations with our police chief. In fact, as early as last night, we were on the phone for about an hour talking about our plans. And he and I are going to spend a lot of time going forward on helping people get over that fear and making law enforcement and public safety in our community a true community problem. It's going to be not just a police problem to fix, but a community problem to fix. So we've got to bring our community together to understand what they can do to make this a better place to live. Mental health and addiction, my day one promise to the residents has been to have a conversation about that. I've already started assembling the group of folks who will be at that table for that discussion on May 1st.
Wow.
And we will be having a real conversation about what we can do different. I very concerned for this community with the mental health and addiction crisis. We had our fire department respond over 1,000 mental health related calls in 2022. Our police department, almost as many. We want to start with the high school kids, and we want to give them some tools that they can use to be disruptors for those times where they get a call or a text message from one of their friends saying they want to harm themselves. Those kids are stuck in their rooms at 10 o'clock at night when they get those messages. They don't know what to do. And they don't want to tell their parents. They don't want to tell the police. So we're going to give them some training, equip them with some tools that they can use to hopefully prevent tragedy from occurring and ultimately get ourselves to a better place. And then from an economic development standpoint, boy, am I excited about all the opportunities to bring new business to Naperville. We're in a unique spot. We've got a lot of opportunities for redevelopment on the north side of town. District 204 side of Naperville, which is one of our other school districts, they are really thirsty for as much commercial development that we can possibly get on their side to fund their schools. So there's a lot of great conversations. I already started having some of those conversations. My phone's been blowing up since election night with people excited about the possibility of coming to Naperville.
Great. Awesome. You've laid out your priorities very rightly: public safety, mental health, and economic development. I think those are three important priorities, not only for the city of Naperville, for the adjoining suburbs, the city of Chicago, and the rest of America, as you can see what's going on. So, Scott, tell me, what's wrong with the world today? Is there a need today to offer a bold, progressive internationalism that stands in stark contrast to the too often belligerent and myopic unilateralism that an administration usually stands for?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that question, but I will tell you this. Along my journey to run for office here, which is, I think, where all political stuff starts, is local elections, right? Everything I did along this journey was centered about being a nonpartisan candidate for a nonpartisan office. And as I had those conversations with people, I mean, thousands of those conversations and meet and greets and all those things throughout Naperville, which is a relatively divided community politically, we found common ground. And we found common ground on the fact that people wanted to have a safe place with great schools, with a thriving local economy. The politics of these parties and the national parties, it didn't matter to me. That's not what this was about. And I think people were just tired of those conversations affecting their daily lives. And I think with the internet and the constant feeding of television news, giving them all these one-sided stories or versions of these stories, they just wanted some sort of authenticity for their hometown to be a place where we could just focus on Naperville stuff. And to me, that was very, very refreshing. So when I walked into a room and I would do a meet and greet, I never knew anybody's politics. That didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was we were all here because we were Napervillians and we love this place. And we want to get this city that we know and love to continue for decades to come and be a place that maybe our kids will come back and want to live in and repeat that cycle of how wonderful this place has been for us as residents. And, hopefully we'll be on those lists of the greatest place to live in the world for decades to come.
Absolutely. Very well said. And your heart is in Naperville. We all know that. On a lighter note, tell us, name three persons you would like to have dinner with. It could be living or in the past.
Boy, I would love to get my friends George Pradle and Bill Young together for sure, and sit down and talk about everything we've been through and everything that we're going to go through together, because I think they are going to be with me on this journey. They were very special people in my life, and I think they'd be very proud. And the third person would be my mom, who's no longer with us, but she's with me in spirit, and I think she would be proud of what we've accomplished together, and also that person I could lean on when those days get tough.
Well, you're a living example of how family values play an integral part of a person's personality and success. Your wife, Linda, of 25 years, is a successful real estate professional and a yoga teacher. Your 22-year-old son, Sam, is a U.S. Military Academy West Point graduate serving the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne Division. And Hope, your daughter, is a volleyball student athlete of Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee.
Got it.
What a well-rounded and grounded family God has blessed you with.
Sure.
And this itself is a great blessing, Mayor Scott WEHRLI. Tell us, our viewers, how and when you first met the love of your life, Linda.
So she was working at the park district where I was working as a part-time policeman very early on, and she and I became friends because it was the place where I had to go put gas in the police car. And
Interesting.
her office was in the back of this same building where they had the gas pumps, and I would stop by and see her from time to time. And over time, and I think it was a year or two later, we ended up at a Christmas party together, sitting at the same table, and that was the beginning.
Wow.
So
beginning of a lifetime
you
love.
got it. You got it.
Now, could you describe, how would you describe your inspirational partner, who has been, Linda, who has been very active in your campaign too, as a family, as a couple? And that's what we heard brought Naperville people together, because today they wanted to see an ideal family, an ideal couple, with so many things happening around us. And you all gave them that hope, that confidence. How will you describe Linda in 3 words?
Ooh, my biggest cheerleader.
Good. 1.
She is one of those people in life that people want to be around because she's so positive. And there was a point when early in our relationship, it was funny. I was described as shy and meek by some people I knew in business. And as I continued to start our dating and throughout our relationship, she brought so much good out of me, and it was just really life-changing to become more confident and more outgoing with my personality. I attribute a lot of that to her because she was just that type of person from the beginning.
You said it so well. Today, you have given Naperville, the city, hope again. Scott WEHRLI represents the voice of hope, opportunity, and optimism. You are a walking lexicon of hope. I would say a rhetoric virtuoso. That means one who is multifaceted and impressed us, one of a kind. God is choosing you to start a generational blessing. You are the difference maker. In closing, what is your message to the city of Naperville and to all our worldwide viewers?
Well, I am humbled and blessed to be chosen to be the next mayor of one of the most amazing cities in the world. And I am looking forward to everything we can do as a community together to get us to the next place. And that next place is through our bicentennial, which is coming up in 2031. We'll be 200 years old. We have a lot of opportunity to renew and grow this community from an economic development standpoint. But more than anything, we want to keep everything that made Naperville so special for so many years. And, change is ultimately inevitable, but we can never forget where we came from. And that's very imperfect, right? I mean, history is full of amazing stories and then pretty bad ones. And we've got to have all that in our mind as we make these decisions to lead the city forward. But more than anything, as the city's changed and the makeup of our community has become so dynamic and multicultural, I am excited to be a mayor of the people, for the people, and give all of our residents a voice. Just like George Pradle did when he would walk into that room and he would find that one person who didn't have somebody to talk to and bring them to the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mayor Scott WEHRLI, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And I'm sure that you are a role model of a person who embraces, engages, enlightens, and empowers.
Thank you.
And viewers, you've just met and viewed the dynamic new mayor of the city of Naperville, Scott WEHRLI. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.